is the Lenovo Yoga Book, and it's well, to be honest, I'm not really sure what it is. It's a 2-in-1, clearly, given how it folds on its hinge to become a usable tablet, but it also has a laptop mode. The main confusion stems when you realize that most 2-in-1s are mainly meant to be a laptop, while this thing runs a tablet operating system, which would suggest that it's mainly supposed to be a tablet like the iPad is. But the main difference between this thing and something like a Microsoft Surface is that the keyboard is permanently attached, which puts this thing in the weirdest superposition of laptops I've ever seen. Back in 2016 when the Yoga Book came out, there were lots of people who were also confused on exactly who this device was for. Which, I think I can actually answer that question, but that'll come later in the video. With the introduction out of the way though, I think we should address the elephant in the room about this laptop's design, which is the lower half and just how crazy it looks. It's just Lenovo's Halo keyboard, which is a buttonless implementation of a keyboard. It's certainly really unique looking, and definitely a party trick, but it's far from useful in my opinion. It kind of feels like you're typing on an iPad without looking, which is incredibly uncomfortable. Yes, there is a vibration motor for haptic feedback, but that's only for each key press. It isn't to individual keys. But having used it for even a couple of weeks at this point, I'm still not very fast and I make a ton of mistakes, simply because I just don't know what keys I'm pressing. Motor memory does help with this, and I'm sure practice could make anybody better, but it just takes away so much of what you've learned with a normal keyboard. Also, I can't help but think that there must have been an internal design joke about keeping the home row bumps on the keyboard like this. However, what's good about this keyboard is that it's not all just for show. There actually is a useful implementation of having something super flat like this, which is at the press of a button, it becomes a really cool drawing surface that you can use with the included pen. What Lenovo calls the Create pad down here is made of a Wacom digitizer. It allows you to use the stylus to take notes, draw, or do really anything. I'm no digital artist, but I have used drawing tablets for classes before, and I consider something like this close to Wacom Intuos in quality. Input lag is perfectly acceptable, and pressure sensitivity works admirably. Now I know in today's time this might be kind of foreign to some artists because they're obviously used to drawing on the screen with Apple Pencils and S Pens and everything, but this does have its pros of, for example, separating the touch inputs on the screen from the actual drawing you're doing while not blocking your work. With that said, it's not like you can't use a pen on the screen. If you go to the settings and turn the Any Pen function on, you can use the stylus and really anything else conductive to draw directly on the screen. But before you go drawing on the screen for just everything, input lag is unacceptably high in my opinion, and you lose pressure sensitivity entirely. But while we're on the topic of the screen is pretty nice. It's 1200p resolution, giving us a respectable pixel density of 224, not quite Retina, but across a 10.1 inch canvas it looks plenty good. It's IPS and has full P3 color support, so this thing is actually really nice for watching content on. Additionally, the screen swings back on this really cool looking watch band hinge, which Lenovo was marketing heavily in 2016 or so. It gives the device a really nice premium finish and makes this thing feel like something a lot more expensive than it was when it came out. The only real downside of the screen are probably just the things it lacks in comparisons to modern devices. I mean, this was a long time before AMOLED would start becoming common in tablets and laptops alike, let alone something like Apple's mini LED technology, the iPad Pro. And 120Hz refresh rate was not even on the minds of the people who were designing this thing. Plus, the fat bezels on this thing make it look like an iPad from 2011. On the sides of the device you have a few ports. You have micro USB for charging, micro HDMI for connecting to an external display, a slot for your SD card, a headphone jack, volume rockers, and your power button. And you also have these side-mounted speakers, which are kind of like you would get on an iPad, and they sound pretty good. Take a listen. With the hardware out of the way though, let's get into the specs of this old futuristic device and assess its usability in 2022. Inside of the Lenovo Yoga Book is an x86 Intel Atom X5 Z850 processor with 4GB of onboard RAM and 64GB of storage. These specs were comparable to a flagship phone from the era, like this Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, review soon, and Android generally runs smoothly because of it. There was a Windows version of the Yoga Book that you could get for a slight upcharge that would bring a lot more software utility for it, but the main problem is that 4GB of RAM simply isn't enough in 2022, especially with Windows 10. Applications that you might like drawing in, like Adobe Photoshop or GIMP, will eat it up immediately and leave none left over.
The added CPU only adds to it, but at least it is reasonably usable if you're patient, while physically not being able to load programs is a non-fixable issue. Moving on to the benchmark, this device scores 242 single core and 874 multi-core in Geekbench 4, which is about in line with the Snapdragon 820. But although doing simple things like navigating the UI, scrolling through the web browser and web pages worked fine, heavy multitasking with multiple apps open or even opening more modern apps that just happen to be CPU intensive will make it hang. Older games like Minecraft, Smash Hit, and Super Text Kart ran pretty well, but newer games like Genshin Impact simply refused to launch. So the gaming experience is acceptable if you manage your expectations, and the Android experience is usable if buggy sometimes. What's not so great though, this is not going to be usable for long. You see, this thing shipped with Android 6.0 back in 2016 when it launched, and it did end up getting nougat, but then Lenovo completely dropped support for it. So that means that this is stuck on a 6-year-old version of Android, which I do not recommend at all using in 2022. Apps are already starting to drop Marshmallow, and nougat's on the chopping block next. And the unfortunate thing is that there's not a lot of hope because custom ROMs are not a thing because of the niche market this thing entered, and you could install Windows on this thing theoretically, but unlocking the bootloader is insanely hard apparently, and there's no guarantee that the unique hardware of this thing, like the create pad or the keyboard, would even work properly in Windows. It's really unfortunate because even if they gave this thing like Oreo, let alone Pi by some miracle, I consider it a perfectly secure device for now. So, who's the Lenovo Yoga Book really for? Well, if you ask me, it's for people who aren't looking for something for a particular purpose. It's for people who want to be creative. Because, yes, people who want a thin and light small laptop will love this thing. But it's also made for people who fancy an iPad with a keyboard accessory attached all the time. It's for digital artists, it's for note takers, and it's for students and people who want a good productivity device. Assuming they can get used to the Halo keyboard, obviously. But most importantly, the display, the 8 hours of battery life I clocked in on this thing, and the really nice design and build quality make it good at being all of those things. With that said, should you buy a Lenovo Yoga Book in 2022? Well, I'm gonna have to go with no on this one. I mean, used market prices are reasonable. I got this one for about $150, even though they do tend to go for a little bit more in really good condition. It is a pretty solid computer for that price. But the thing is that the software experience will just bring it down in either case, Windows or Android. And I certainly don't recommend that anybody buy this for the long haul. With that though, this has been the Lenovo Yoga Book, and this is Calc G, out.